Hi, I'm Yvonne from Pree Designs. Today I'm going to show you how I have made this little box, but made it bigger. Okay, I've already shown how I've made these little boxes on a separate YouTube video, so check out that if you would like to make the teeny ones. But then I have stretched it out to make it big enough to hold a little bottle of bubbles or wine, a lot of chocolates. If you really want to make a big box to fit a whole box of chocolates, maybe favourites or something like that. And it does use a 12-inch scrapbooking page or a 30.5 by 34.5 scrapbooking page. So I'm making this as a gift. And I've got to use non-traditional colours. So I'm going to use purple. This is a Stampin' Up! Cardstock, but it is a few years old. I'm not sure even the name of the colour, maybe Orchid Opulence. So that goes to show how old this particular piece is. But it was out of my stash. So, and then I'm going to use different purples to make a designer series paper, a stamped image to decorate it. So the first thing I need to do is score it at 6 centimetres. And then also score it at 25 centimetres. 25.5 centimetres. So just add that extra 0.5. And then I'm going to turn my cardstock so that my two score lines are horizontal. And then I've got to cut down to the first score line or the top score line and cut up from the bottom to the next score line. So I'm going to put my cardstock at 7 centimetres. You're not going to be able to see that. I'm just moving my trimmer to see if you can see that a bit more easily. So cardstock at 7 centimetres, just bringing my blade up, and I'm going to cut from the top down to the score line, which is actually 6 centimetres. Lift my ruler up, take my blade all the way down to the bottom, put my ruler down and take my blade from the bottom of the page up to the score line that was across the bottom, which was the 25.5 centimetre score line. And when I'm down and I can see my centimetre ruler, that is actually scoring up to 25.5 centimetres. Then I'm going to take my cardstock across to 14 centimetres and repeat that process. So from the top down to the first score line, which is at 6 centimetres, lift the ruler up, take the blade down, start at the bottom and take the blade back up to the other score line, which is 25.5 centimetres. Taking my cardstock across to 21 centimetres, repeating exactly the same cuts, just getting it right on the 21 centimetres. So repeating the cuts, I've done the bottom one first this time, and now for the top. Then the final cut for this part is paper across to 28 centimetres, and repeat that again. Bottom down, top down and bottom up. So get rid of my trimmer. So that gives me cut lines. I'm just going to fold that so that you can hopefully more easily see. That gives me cut lines, which I'm going to indicate where my panels are at the top and also at the bottom. So I've just folded those score lines over so that you can see. So the score lines are exactly the same spot at the bottom as they are at the top. Now I need to make some diagonal score lines. So now I've just grabbed a ruler and I take my pick tool, and it's got the, I can never think of what this is called, but it's got the little balls at the end. So you can do your dry scoring with this. Because it'd be too difficult to do this in my with my cutting paper cutter. So I've got to score diagonally. So I'm hoping that you can see that. I'm just making sure you can see it on camera. So I'm just taking the ruler from the edge of the paper at the top, very, very top score line. And I'm just pulling my paper up so that hopefully you can see that there. And then I have to score down. I'm actually scoring diagonally across the first panel. So I'm scoring down to where the first cut is on the bottom edge. So just scoring through there. I'm going to repeat the same at the next, on the next panel, which is scoring from the very top at the score line down to the bottom of that panel. Taking my ruler across to the next one, and hopefully you can see that I'm just using the tabs that are at the top and the bottom to align where my ruler needs to be so that makes it easy to score. And the final little one here. Okay, so that's my first set of diagonal score lines. Now to do my second set of diagonal score lines, and I'm just going to score in the opposite direction. So I'm starting at the bottom corner this time and scoring up through the first panel, which this is the first panel, up to the tab cut. Oops, my ruler just moved there, so I'll just go back over that. So I've got a cross through my very first panel. Repeat that for the next panel, and you're going to repeat that all the way through. Oh, that was a horrible noise, sorry. So now it's time to fold on each of those score lines, the diagonal score lines. So just carefully take your cardstock and fold it as a mountain fold. So just scoring on that. I do all the one direction first. I just find that easier. Just making sure I've got that correct, yes. Again. So that's one direction, that's all my score lines. And now to the other direction. And the final one. So I had this lovely, oops, that's run the wrong way. I had this lovely crisscross pattern and score line pattern through there. Now it's time to decorate. Right, so I've got a piece of A4 cardstock and just basic white, and I've trimmed it down to 18.5 centimetres because the height of my panels is 19.5 centimetres. So I've trimmed it down by 1 centimetre. I'm going to make my own pattern paper using the Magical Meadow stamp set, and the current 4 purple-ish or purple toned colours, which are Highland Heather, Fresh Freesia, a little bit of pink with Bubble Bath, and also Gorgeous Grape. So I've just put my fingers in this ink pad. So I've got 2 really good purple tones, and then a little bit more of a pinky tone, and then a pink tone. So I'm going to start off with the biggest stamp image. This is how I usually do my stamping. And I'm going to stamp this one in Highland Heather. And I am just going to stamp randomly over the cardstock. Okay, that's my first one done. So that was all stamped in the Highland Heather. Then I'm going to take my second, or there's two that are very similar. I'm going to take this one because it's a little bit wider, and I'm going to bring in the Gorgeous Snow. I'm going to bring in the Fresh Freesia and stamp this one in the Fresh Freesia. And again, just stamping randomly to fill in the blank spaces with image. So that was the Fresh Freesia. And then I'm going to do this one in Bubble Bath. So again, filling in some more space. Just want to see how it's going to fit best because I still have one more stamp to add in. And then my final stamp, this is probably my favourite stamp in this whole stamp set. It's got the little berries on it. Now, being the smallest stamp, I'm going to stamp that in the darkest colour, which is the Gorgeous Grape. You can see how I'm just building this. I'm trying not to overstamp a previous stamp, but a couple of spots I have. Just want to get another one in here. Turn that around the opposite way to that one. And that's enough. I could go back and add any extra bits if I wished, but I think that's enough. And now to add a little bit of bling to it, I'm going to use my Wink of Stella pen. I'm just grabbing my silicone mat in because I want to squeeze I'll bring it in camera. I want to squeeze the product so that it comes down to the nib of the pen. And in case if I over squeezed, I wouldn't waste it to go on the silicone mat so I could pick that up. So then I'm just going to tap the pen on my hand, squeeze it a little bit more, but not over the work. Oh, and that's good. Now you can see some splotches are starting to come out of the pen and flick onto the paper. Okay, that's enough. So you may or may not be able to see, but that has a little hint, a few little splotches of the glitter or the product from the Wink of Stella pen. Right, now to show you how I'm going to cut my handmade pattern paper up, I just did a pattern on a piece of copy paper, and I've just marked at the top and the bottom in 6 centimetre intervals all the way across the cardstock. So at 6, at 12, at 18, at 24, and then the very end one is actually just shy of 30 centimetres, which would be the next 6. It's about 5.998 or something like that. That's just the length of or the height of our A4 copy paper. And then I've done, like I did the scoring on the main panels, is I've pencil marked from top to bottom at the first 6 centimetre mark, then the next one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and then the opposite way diagonally, just so that this gives you a good indication of how you're going to cut up your fancy piece of paper, or if you're using designer series paper, how you're going to cut that up. So now my designer series paper has had a chance to dry off, and you can probably now see better the shimmering of the Wink of Stella pen. So I'm going to draw my grid on my hand stamped paper. So I'm just going to mark across at 6, 12, 18 and 24 at the top, and do the same at the bottom. Of course, I could have done this using my grid paper. That would have been much faster. 18 and 24. And then I'm going to draw my diagonals. I'm drawing them because it's easier to see, and it'll be easier to then cut because this is the stamped paper. Depending on how familiar you are with your trimmer is how easy you could do this particular step. I just couldn't see that mark there, so I just had to remark it. It was just in the middle of one of the darker stamps. Next. Okay, now in the other direction. Okay, so that gives me my crisscross pattern through my stamped paper, and now it's time to cut along all of those pencil lines. Lining it up in the valley, and my paper trimmer needs a clean, so I'll grab a toothbrush out and I will clean that shortly. I'm just going to do all the directions one way first. Okay, and now all of the pieces the other direction, and I'm going to lay them, it's out of screenshot, but I'm going to lay them directly onto my my box panel so that I know which piece is which, and I'll pull that in once I've actually done all of my cutting. And then the next piece, oops, we will have a couple of spare pieces left over. And then the final piece. All right, so the final pieces I'm just placing on the table. I'll get rid of my trimmer now. And I'm just dragging my work in because this is where all the pieces fit. And then my final pieces were here and here and that piece there. So now I'm just going to adhere all of those on and make sure everything fits nicely. I may need to do a little bit of adjusting, but I'll see if I need to as I go along. Right, so I'm going to do the central panels first, and I want to make sure that I'm taking the glue right to the very, very edge, but not too much glue, because if you put too much glue, it's just going to smush out and it will make everything stick. So you can see I've got a really fine line of glue through there. And then that's going to go on my first full panel. I'm just moving it a little bit. Now the beauty of these boxes is, remember, it is a handmade piece. It's not going to be exact. If it was exact, it would be made by a robot. And I'm not a robot. Next one. Okay, first panel's done, and now I'm going to put the next panels in. All right, so that's all my main panels done. I'm not putting these pieces on because these pieces, some of these are actually going to be stuck and used as the tabs to hold the box together. All right, so now it's time to do a little bit of paper snipping. I actually don't need this end panel, so I'm just going to trim right along the edge of my stamped paper. Got to be able to get in there. Up to that little tab and get rid of that. I've got to do the same down the bottom, so get my scissors right in there, right up to my paper, and get rid of that. I've also, off camera, I did go through and take off all my pencil marks. Got a little snag there, so I'm just going to fix that up. Okay, now it's time to adhere the box together. So this bit's a little bit tricky. I'm just going to flip it over. This is your panel that you stick in here. All right, so we actually need glue on this panel, but not right to the very, very edge. You want to leave a little bit of a gap so that you've got a little bit of purple showing through of the card, the box base, I suppose you would call it, some of the plain card, so that you've got that little bit of matte showing. Now, as I mentioned, it's not perfect, it's handmade. So a little bit of glue all the way through here. And again, I just squeeze very gently. I don't want a huge blob of glue. I just want lots of glue in, but lots of fine pieces of glue, if that makes sense. Then I'm going to bring my panel over. As I said, this is the tricky bit. And I need to adhere. This is the really tricky bit because we can't lay this box flat because it will spoil. So you probably need an extra pair of hands. I don't have them right here right now. Going in underneath. I've got my whole hand inside the box to bring it together. And because we're using glue, we've got a few minutes to play and manipulate where the card's going to sit. So now it's starting to adhere and now it's starting to play nicely. Just making sure that those top corners are all good. Not quite. I need to bring that out a little bit. That's all good. You can see up the very top I've got a nice corner. I'm going to turn it around, put my hand in the other way, and make sure I've got the same at this end, which I haven't. So I'm just going to push the card out gently, holding it in place with my finger, and I think that is pretty good. So that's going to be the back of my box, but that's where all the join is. So I'm just holding it again. All right, so now it is time to make our box. These panels go inwards, but naturally this actually has already, as I put it together, all of the large panels have pushed themselves in. If they hadn't, you would just gently push in at the center so that you're not making a crease and there's no score line through here, but all of those panels just ever so gently push in. Close up my box, and that is my box done. So now it's time to do some tags and some closures. So I've now gone ahead and made a tag, and I have used the tailored tag dies, which is this set with a little reinforcement in the gorgeous grape. I've also cut 2 pieces of 6.8 by 7 centimeters of gorgeous grape. I've used a little piece of the leftover paper that I stamped just to add to the end of the tag to just tie it all in nicely. And then the greeting is also from the Magical Meadow, and I've stamped that in gorgeous grape. So now I'm just going to finish off. So I need to secure my base. So I'm just going to glue all those pieces in. And then glue on this piece and glue that down. I'm going to set it down on the table because I want to make sure that it is square. And then to cover the whole base, just so that it looks a little bit neater, I'm putting one of these panels of the gorgeous grape across the bottom. It will sit better one way because it is slightly rectangle. And that's just to cover the base so that it looks nice. And it'll also give it a little bit more strength. And then into my gift box, I'm actually popping a tiny little bottle of bubbles. And I'll also need that box to be quite strong on the bottom because of the bubbles. I'm closing my lid up. And then on my lid, again, just to make this a little bit nicer, I'm putting a piece of the gorgeous grape. So I'm going to put glue on this panel because this is the smaller panel. And then the gorgeous grape is going to go over the top. And it will have a tiny little border. I'm just making sure everything's nice and square. A tiny little border of the lighter purple underneath. So I'll just hold that in place for a few moments. And then I'm bringing in actually a retired ribbon because this is gorgeous grape and it's a sheer ribbon. I'm just going to tie it in a nice big bow. Oops. Bring that back in the middle of the camera. Make sure that's straight along the sides. So just a nice big bow to finish off. I could secure the lid with some magnets, but there's no need because I'm securing it with the bow. On the little boxes, I put little magnet pieces. So there is my bow. Make it a little bit bigger. And then to add my tag. And then that is my take on the double faceted gift box but making it big so that it would fit my little bottle of bubbles in. Now I did make it to, oops, I missed the other piece. I did make it to size to fit that particular bottle of bubbles in. So if you have a taller bottle of bubbles, you will need to adjust the first 2 score lines that you make. I would adjust the top score line, so the lid of the box, not the base, because you want that to be nice and strong and nice and firm. So there is my gift all finished, and it is called a double faceted box, but I have, as I said, made it much taller so that it would fit my little bottle of wine in it. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you have fun making this box in whatever size you desire. Thanks.